This week on Business Brief, we hear about state legislation aimed at easing the financial burden of career and technical training. Then we look at looming changes to regulation around an endangered root. Welcome back to Business Brief, Missouri Business Alert's podcast focused on the business news and issues shaping the state. My name is Noah Grabianski, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Yasha Mikołajczyk. Welcome back to the show, Noah.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. How have you been? How's Chicago?
I've been all right. Chicago was good. It was a lot of moving stuff, a lot of nostalgic, going through old boxes and things.
Were you able to at least get some good eats while you were there?
Oh my God, I ate so much. It was so good.
Well, good food also means good headlines.
So true.
So
I'm always saying that.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
The U.S. economy shrank at a 0.5% annual pace in the first quarter of the year. The Commerce Department's Thursday report showed an unexpected shrinkage in growth estimates amid an import surge and fear around President Donald Trump's trade wars and tariff promises. This follows a 2.4% increase in gross domestic product in the final quarter of last year. In the first 3 months of this year, imports grew nearly 40% and pushed the GDP down nearly 5 percentage points.
The Bipartisan Policy Center predicts that the United States could default on its debt sometime between mid-August and early October. This prediction pushes the so-called X date back by about a month from the previous estimate, but the think tank still recommends that Congress raise or suspend the debt limit before the August recess. It lines up with the Congressional Budget Office's earlier estimate that the default could occur between mid-August and the end of September. Congress is scheduled to be in recess for most of August.
The advertising firm Omnicom Group, which owns the St. Louis-based FleishmanHillard, this week received regulatory approval to go through with its $13.5 billion acquisition of the Interpublic Group of companies. Combined, the two companies will become the largest media buying advertising agency in the world with over $25 billion in annual revenue. Omnicom agreed with federal regulators to not engage in collusion or coordination to redirect advertising from media publishers based on political or ideological viewpoints. The merger is expected to close by the end of the year.
St. Louis-based nonprofit health system Mercy has opened up 2 joint primary care clinics with insurer Humana. The clinics aim to provide care, education, and support to patients aged 65 and up on Medicare. The first opened in Springfield at the beginning of the month, and the second opened in Nixa 2 weeks ago. A third is planned to open in Springfield, and additional communities in Arkansas and Oklahoma served by Mercy are being considered for additional clinics as well.
President Donald Trump has been given the golden share in Japan-based Nippon Steel's acquisition of U.S. Steel. The provision gives Trump or someone he designates the power to appoint board members and have a say in decisions that affect domestic steel production and overseas competition. Under future presidents, that power will revert to the Treasury Department and the Commerce Department. U.S. Steel employs roughly 850 union steel workers at its St. Louis area plant.
5 counties in Missouri no longer have a license office, as budget issues have forced 6 to close and dozens more to operate under an expired contract. A bill now awaits action from Governor Mike Kehoe, aiming to address that by increasing license office fees by 50%. That means the transaction fees for a driver's license would increase from $6 to $9 for the shortest period and $12 to $18 for the longest. The goal of the bill is to make licensing offices more attractive to contractors and avoid closures. For our first story, we're taking a look into career and technical education programs and the pending legislation that would boost access to them.
Career and technical education programs. What are those?
There are programs like professional truck driving, medical training, and emergency telecommunications. There are short-term certificate programs focused on getting people ready for the workforce.
Okay, yeah. So when you say boost access, what do you mean?
Well, at the moment, financial support for people pursuing these credentials can be hard to come by. But this new legislation aims to change that. Reporter Riley Hindle has that story.
Educators, recruiters, and business groups from across mid-Missouri gather at Moberly Area Community College's Columbia campus on a recent morning. They're here for sessions and demonstrations on the associate, certificate, and workforce development programs the college offers. Instructors gave crash courses in health sciences and mechatronics, another name for the field of automation and robotics. These sessions aim to give educators an idea of the post-secondary education options they could inform their students of. Students interested in these programs could have an easier time paying for them next year thanks to a bill passed by state lawmakers. Pending Governor Mike Kehoe's signature, the legislation would create a reimbursement process that would help cover the cost of tuition, fees, and books for career and technical education programs.
It's another avenue. It's a different avenue to allow more people to participate, to help more students find their right path in life, because college is not for everybody. I think we can all agree with that. And we have such a high need for tech, people going in the tech field, like plumbing and electrician and all that kind of stuff also.
That's State Representative Ann Kelly, a Republican from Lamar who filed the bill in the House. If signed, the bill will go into effect for the 2026-2027 school year. It's expected to cost just over $2.1 million in fiscal year 2027 and up to $3.3 million in fiscal year 2028. To qualify, students must fulfill GPA and tutoring requirements or have acquired a high school career and technical education certificate. These provisions are similar to the A-plus program, which provides scholarships for students attending public two-year community colleges or vocational schools. Moberly Area Community College President Todd Martin says that career and technical education programs have always been essential in setting up people for early career starts and long-term success. Martin says nursing programs are one such example, allowing students to get an initial certificate that enables them to start working and then pursue further education to advance in their career.
But all of the time, they've got a credential that allows them to work and earn money and support themselves and support their family. So it's a pretty dynamic model.
Back at the Columbia campus, groups get a first-hand look at what students experience in lab classes. Surgical Technology Director Carrie DeLine shows how to properly put on scrubs for a surgery.
So, I'm going to put on my gown first.
Moberly offers an associate's degree in surgical technology. However, it also offers certificate and workforce development programs that often don't qualify for financial assistance under A-plus or Pell Grant eligibility requirements because they're shorter. Martin says the cost can be a deterrent to potential students.
It's an expensive program to run, and so the cost for a CDL program, I don't remember exactly our tuition, but it approaches $5,000 for that 6-week course, and that presents a barrier to a lot of students, and they decide not to pursue that training because they don't think they can afford it. And now that student that thinks that that's really what they want to do.
Currently, students either have to shell out the money or apply for grants in hopes of covering tuition and fees. University of Missouri management professor Daryl Smith says a program like this would be an opportunity for getting young people into the workforce sooner.
Previously our state passed the Fast Track Workforce Readiness Initiative, but that was for adults who are 25 years of age or older, right? But to have a program like this that taps into the recent high school graduate population, I think that's going to be a game changer. I think that is, it will be empowering to our young people.
For Missouri Business Alert, I'm Riley Hindle.
Our next story looks at ginseng roots.
Ginseng roots, like the stuff people drink in tea?
Precisely that kind, though I prefer an Irish breakfast blend if I'm being particular.
I'm more of a coffee person myself, to be honest, but wow, what's the deal with ginseng?
Well, we aren't focusing on the tea, but more on the root itself. Missouri is home to wild ginseng that grows throughout central and southern Missouri. Individuals can harvest wild ginseng and sell it to ginseng dealers who then distribute it. However, on July 1st, new regulations will take effect requiring harvesters and dealers to obtain permits and certifications for managing the root. Here's that story. On July 1st, Missourians who harvest and deal in ginseng will have to abide by new regulations. American ginseng is a perennial herb that is scattered around the Ozarks and uncommonly in other parts of Missouri. It is the only plant that has a harvest regulated by the state, even on private land. Melissa Brigler is the Wildlife Diversity Coordinator with the Missouri Department of Conservation. She says the reason why ginseng is regulated is because of an international trade agreement known as the Convention of International Trade of Endangered Species.
It protects species, it can be animal or plant, from going extinct due to international trade. Ginseng is on this
agreement. So because ginseng is so valuable overseas, even though within the United States it's not as popular and not as valuable, but it is threatened to become extinct if we don't regulate it correctly because of the market overseas.
American ginseng was added to Appendix 2 of the international treaty in 1975. Brigler says that because of this treaty, if the MDC did not regulate it, no ginseng from Missouri could leave the country. The new regulations will require harvesters and dealers to purchase permits. Harvester permits will be $20 for residents and $150 for non-residents. Dealer permits are $100 for residents and $300 for non-residents. Also, roots must be certified by an MDC agent, and certifications cost $25. With these regulations, the MDC hopes to better monitor the ginseng market in Missouri and protect the root from being illegally harvested. Prior to the new regulations, there were fewer mechanisms in place to track the amount of ginseng being harvested from the state. While Brigler is unsure how many people are trying to harvest ginseng in Missouri, she says it can be lucrative for those who do harvest and deal in it.
So wild ginseng can be worth, in Missouri, you can sell it for like $400 a pound or so.
However, some who work in the industry say the market has been declining over the years. Dale Schofield is a ginseng dealer in the state. He collects ginseng between Missouri and Arkansas and then sells it to buyers in other states, such as Tennessee, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and others. He used to work alongside his father buying roots.
I believe it was in maybe the 80s, early 90s. I believe that ginseng got up to about its highest. For average ginseng, we were paying very close to $800 a pound for dry roots then. It's never got that high again. Last year, for some of the very biggest, largest roots, we paid $700 a pound. On an average, it was about $575, maybe $600 a pound as the end of the year approached. Most years, ginseng goes up toward the end of the year. Usually starts out $100 or $200 less at the beginning until the market gets level.
However, with these new regulations, Schofield is concerned about what this could mean for the people like him who work in the industry.
But these new regulations, if I plant a seed that I purchased down here on my property, and then I wait for that ginseng to get big enough to dig, and I have to get not a paid permit, but I have to get a permit from the state to be able to dig ginseng on my own property that I planted myself. To be able to dig that, to harvest that ginseng, I have to get a permit number. And then if I want to give that ginseng away to one of my neighbors that might want to use some of it or something, I have to have that root certified, and I have to pay the conservation $25 to give away root that I purchased the seeds, planted, and harvested on my own land, and I don't think that's fair.
Apart from concerns about what the new regulations could mean for those in the industry, Schofield is worried that the practice of harvesting and dealing in ginseng in Missouri could fall by the wayside as time goes on.
I believe it is a dying art. I believe the old-timers and people that care about it are eventually going to die off, and it's going to be lost. There will be a few always that, apothecary-type people and stuff that will use a little of it for their own use and few medicines and things. But I believe that eventually, unless things really change, that just won't be no ginseng in a few more years. Now, my dad had said that for 20 years before he passed, but it seemed to keep going, but it is down to half. And in the last 20 years, it's went down to half. And we do have a few young children that their parents and their grandparents and stuff, especially in Arkansas, is raising them up to still dig the root and teaching them the right way to do it. And they do very well. But I think all of those type things are dying off and will soon be gone.
Now it's time for our words of the week. Yasha, what's your word?
Today, my word is hydrometallurgy.
Hydro, what, huh?
Hydrometallurgy. It's a water-based method of extracting minerals from ore. It's a more environmentally friendly method of ore extraction for critical minerals like nickel or cobalt.
Why is it in the news this week?
Companies in Missouri are testing out, if not already using, hydrometallurgy to extract critical minerals from mine waste. They hope to make the state a major supplier of minerals essential in all sorts of technology, from batteries to defense systems to clean energy solutions.
Huh, sounds like that method might be pretty successful.
Well, some roadblocks are still being worked out. They still have to work around environmental regulations and high costs, and still need to prove that hydrometallurgy is a viable long-term solution.
I guess we'll have to keep an eye out to see how that develops.
We will, and of course, for much more about hydrometallurgy and critical minerals in Missouri, check out the special project our team just launched at MissouriBusinessAlert.com. Noah, how about you? What's your word this week?
My words this week are pork and beans.
Pork and beans, like the song from Weezer's 2008 masterpiece, self-titled Red Album?
Well, sort of, but think less musical and more culinary.
Okay.
Pork and beans are among the food items included in the American Farm Bureau's annual cookout survey. The Farm Bureau says the average cost of feeding 10 people at a 4th of July cookout is $70.92. That's down 30 cents from last year's record high cost.
Not a huge change, huh? What else is on the list?
The list includes various cookout classics like ingredients for hamburgers and potato salad or chips, ice cream, and lemonade. Pork and beans saw the highest percent increase at almost 9%, but the highest cost increase was beef. 2 pounds of beef is $13.33, since right now demand is so high and the U.S. cattle inventory is so low.
That's interesting. Did anything go down in price since last year?
A couple things, yeah. Pork saw a big decrease in price since the supply of pork products has been higher than normal right now. Potato chips and cheese also decreased in price since demand hasn't been that high.
But if pork is cheaper, why is pork and beans more expensive?
Well, that's because pork and beans is a canned item. Tariffs on aluminum and steel have driven up prices of most everything that comes in a can at the supermarket.
Either way, that's one tasty survey.
Yes, it is. Now it's time for our closing thought.
Today's closing thought comes from Daryl Smith, an associate teaching professor of management here at Mizzou. He touched on how CTE programs benefit growing local communities.
Creating a skilled workforce, by the way, will help local companies, state companies to grow, but it's also going to make our state more attractive to companies that are outside of the state of Missouri.
Well, that's all for this week. M33 Project and DeWolf provided the music for this episode. For my co-host Yasha Mikowajczuk and editors Kelly DeRook and Michael Stacy, I'm Noah Grabianski. Thank you for listening.